Can you talk about the time, the late 1960s, the Black Arts Movement, the cultural, political, Black nationalism, and how Third World Press was an outgrowth of that movement in those times?
Well, I would say we were growth with the movement, not out of the movement, because we started Third World Press really in late part of '66 and into 1977 we incorporated, our first incorporation. But Think Black was published in 1966. And at that time, I was volunteering and just about to end my volunteering with the DuSable Museum and hitting the streets, selling the books on the streets wherever I could. And even with some of the authors that we were publishing at that time, would ask them to take their books out too. We as young, very young men and women decided that if our lives are to mean anything, then we got to fight for what's the right, just, correct, and good. And that any whole people would do that. And I had spent 3 years in the military. And so I had some understanding of what we were up against. That we were up against really a military force, whether it was the local Chicago Police Department or the state police department, or most certainly the national federal department. And what was very clear to me after working with Margaret Burroughs and Charlie Burroughs and Feldman at the museum, in many ways, the real revolutionaries are those who had to make a payroll every 2 weeks. And this was critical because I couldn't pay nobody with a poem. You had to have serious money in order to make sure that people were able to live properly. That's why Black Lives Matter now is important, because what we were fighting for during that period, and that was the period of King, the period of after Malcolm, after Medgar Evers. The point is that we were fighting for the same things: free access to education, employment, the whole housing, all those genuine rights, healthcare, that whole people need. We're fighting for them. It's frightening that we're still fighting for the same things today.
When you were looking at creating a Black institution, why book publishing?
Black Boy by Richard Wright changed my life. And so art became critical and became central in terms of my own development. And I found answers to our problems and answers to our place in the world and where we are in books. And so reading every Black writer I can get my hand on, and every progressive writer writing about Black people and other people I can get my hands on, I read. My wife is in education. And I asked her back in '69, what do you think we really need? She said schools that tell our children the truth. And that's when we started our first storefront, right over there on, actually it's 1970, over on 78th and Ellis. What was clear to me and what was clear to my wife, Dr. Carol Lee, was that essentially we needed independent Black institutions. And so we decided to work in two areas: education and communication. Communication was the publishing, not only publishing Third World Press, but also publishing Black Books Bulletin. We had a magazine for over 20 years. We had these small pamphlets called Black Pages, okay? And we had a newspaper for a while, okay? So we were trying to get information out to Black people. Any people who are in control of their own cultural and political and educational and financial imperatives about the healthy creation of their own, okay? And so I think we create healthy people with knowledge. And what we tried to do with Third World Press is to publish books that didn't lie but told the truth about not only our existence, but the existence of the people who have been oppressing us and other world people that exist in the universe. And so that's part one. Part two, it is critical that we build independent Black institutions at every level of human involvement. I've often said that the major business in the Black community is the church, Black church. And it's true that any other healthy communities find the multiple businesses in their communities. But the businesses that exist in our community, other than the mom and pop stores, whether they're beauty shops or whether they're barbershops or small mom and pop convenience stores, are basically outside ownership from outside the community. And so we're trying to, at one level, say that if we're going to be a whole people, we've got to build institutional structures. That's why we bought this place.
What year did you buy this?
It was in the 90s, okay, early 90s, and which was interesting because the real estate people at the Archdiocese didn't want to sell it to us. What was happening at that time, there were some squatters here who were Catholic, and the guy was protecting them, saying that they were going to buy the place. Well, we knew that was a lie. I met with Bishop Gregory, and he was a black bishop on the south side of Chicago. And it's supposed to be a 15-minute meeting turned into about 2 hours. And when I left Bishop Gregory, I had a letter from him to Cardinal Bernardine stating that we should not only be on the list to buy the property, we should be at the top of the list. Then, of course, the problem then was finding money, because they were asking $1 million. Okay, and of course we didn't have $1 million, but we worked it out.